Alright, so we're back now. We're going to try to work on the hardest part, which is going to be the handguard. Here's the G3 handguard that I got from the JG airsoft rifle, the same airsoft rifle that I built the stock out of, which is all ready to go right now. But I already disassembled this airsoft rifle, as you can see. I'll pull this barrel out here. Now you notice this front sight and this whole piece here is kind of attached to the barrel, and this is metal. This is going to be extremely hard to work with. As you can see, the paintball barrel is going to be quite a bit bigger than this will allow. So basically that would need to be completely cut off if I was going to use that, and have to find another circular piece to fit on there. So what I did, instead of working with this metal piece, I actually bought one of these BT Delta handguards for the BT Delta paintball gun, and it has a front piece that's actually fit more for a paintball gun barrel, so that just slides right on. So you're going to use this front piece. I disassembled this. We're not going to use the handguard. We can set that aside, maybe use it for another project later. The tube and that we're probably not going to use as well. I may use this piece here because this also fits the paintball gun barrel, and it has a set screw on it. I haven't quite determined yet what my plan is as far as completely how I'm going to attach it. We'll have to see how well things go here first before I figure if I'm going to use set screws or anything like that on the barrel. I'm going to try to avoid using set screws, but we'll see. I might use these pieces just as a guide to kind of keep everything in line, keep everything in place for later. So we're going to trash this piece. Okay, we got our main handguard here, which is actually a little bit longer. I had already pre-cut the piece off. I'm not sure if I can find it or not, but I already chucked it, I think. This was about this much longer here. So off camera I had already got ahead of myself here, and I cut this a little bit shorter to 11.5 inches, which is the same length as a HK33 or G3K handguard. So it uses the shorter handguard. Although on the real rifle, this sling attachment here is actually about up to here. I haven't determined yet whether I want to actually move it or if I'll just leave it where it's at or completely remove it. This also came with a pretty nice bipod that goes on the bottom of the handguard. It snaps into place pretty nicely. Another couple things I already did was there's a little nut in here. I glued that into place so that so it doesn't fall off whenever I try to remove the bipod. That way I can take it off, put it on. I chucked the screw that it came with it. It just was a Phillips head screw, and I'm replacing it with this screw. These are just made from parts I had laying around. I got a screw and then like a thumb turn thing. I kind of drilled it out a little bit, and I glued it on there with some JB Weld, painted over it. That way I can have a thumb screw type of turn. And this screw is way too long, so I'm going to have to trim that down. As you can see, it's coming up through there, so that'll need to be trimmed off. But getting ahead of myself here, it's not quite ready for that just yet. So my intention is to be able to keep this, the bipod, and have that be able to attach and detach from the handguard, so I don't want to lose that ability. Then we have the cocking tube here, which actually I didn't cut the size. This was basically the length it was off the airsoft rifle. The rest of it just kind of attached onto the rest of the body here, but I'm just going to chuck this body. It's not really used to me. But I am going to use this cocking tube. It's a pretty nice little charging lever, and I want to be able to have this charging handle actually function. So on the A5, we're going to get rid of the old charging handle here. we're going to leave all the parts in, but I'm going to cut off this piece, and we're going to fill this in with JB Weld to cover that up. But again, that's later on. So we're going to have to try to mount this piece on here, and I'm going to try to get everything flush and lined up. When I hold that flush in line with this piece, you can see there's a lot of material that we're going to have to cut off here. We're going to have to cut off that bottom. And a problem here, this thing's going to have to be modified too, although it's going to be a lot easier since it's plastic now, not metal. When I have this on here, it's not going to line up correctly, everything flush. This is going to be quite a bit lower. So, plan is, later on here, we're going to have to cut this and we're going to glue it and move it up. I may lose this sling attachment, I don't know. Again, this is the first time for this idea of making this handguard. But the plan is we'll cut this, move it up, glue it onto here, and we'll try to get the sling attachment back on there. I'll try to drill it through. We'll see. We'll see what kind of space we got to work with afterwards. But this does actually slide on there pretty easily, same as the other one did. So it actually works. But so first order of business, I think, is what we're going to do is get this lined up and try to get this to be able to mount. Because once we get this mounted to the system here, the main gun, then it'll be a lot easier trying to get everything to be able to line up and figure out where we can glue parts and stuff like that. So that way everything fits together nicely. We're going to have to cut this material here, and we're going to work on the mounting, and then we're going to work on the charging handle itself. So when I pull this back, it's not going to be able to actually go the whole way, the charges, since this is a much shorter distance for that to operate. And I was kind of debating on whether I needed a spring. It came with some various springs in the gun I was going to use. I was going to put extra springs in here with the tension, but just from testing it on here, I think that spring is good enough. That's on this gun. Just doing general tests there. It seems to snap back pretty easily, pretty good. It's not wobbly or anything like that, so I'll probably not have to use a spring in there. Now, my intention of mounting this cocking tube in the whole unit, actually, I'm going to use the front sight of the A5, and we're going to carve out the front piece here, almost like how it fits in the top, except we're going to carve it out from the front. So that way this piece slides in. We'll go ahead and take that off. And then I want it so that this piece actually slides in from the front, and it's going to mount almost the same way as we did from the top, except from the front. And hopefully, with just this screw, that should be, I'm hoping, enough to hold everything in place here. And hopefully we won't have to use any other set screws or anything like that on the barrel, that we can attach this whole entire piece with just the top screw here. Now, you can see this piece here is going to need to be modified. It's too big, because we're also going to need to use this hole that's already on the MK5 for the charging handle. So we need something to go through. Charging handle, I haven't actually determined what I'm going to use yet. I thought maybe something like this Allen wrench, sacrifice one of these, fits nicely through the hole, that way you push back and it'll charge the marker that way. I also noticed the old charging handle from the A5 that's been removed. That actually fits in perfect through that the hole as well, but doesn't go back quite the entire way. I'm not sure if this comes apart any to actually be able to use that. Just this rod. That rod's about perfect size. May take a trip to the hardware store or something, or look around the house here. We'll see what I can find as far as a push rod. I'm leaning toward the metal Allen key just because it fits nice and it's nice and strong. I don't have to worry about bending or breaking or anything like that. So we gotta be able to fit that push rod through, and then we gotta be able to fit this little latch through here to be able to hook it on. So the first thing we're gonna want to do is start carving away right here. And of course, to do that, we're gonna get the Dremel tool out, and we're probably gonna want to use a cutting wheel for that. So you want something like this. They make various types of cutting wheels, some with this type of wheel here. We're going to replace the cutting wheel and pull that off. And we're just going to basically cut straight down. We're just going to make a number of straight cuts and just kind of sand it out by going back and forth. Now I'm going to have to do some measuring. And we're going to have to cut this probably in half. So this needs to be cut maybe just under half, like right around here. Just to be just below this circular piece. I'm going to start trimming that off. So we're going to trim this, and we're going to trim the metal on both sides of the receiver halves so that we can fit this piece in there. That's the first order of business, because I need to get this mount in there first to be able to determine how I'm going to mount everything else. And I'm going to end up gluing this. Now, of course, I'm going to have to cut all this extra off. And I'm going to JB weld this sucker in there, just like that, and mount it on. Before I do all that, I'm going to have to trim the cocking tube here a little bit. Obviously, you see this comes out. So that's going to have to be trimmed down, and we'll probably end up mounting the Allen key on the top, this on the bottom. That way, when you use the cocking tube, the charging handle, it'll push this in there. So that's the plan. So, alright, I'll go ahead and start trimming and cutting this, and then we'll continue the video from there. Okay, I just got done making our cuts that I was just talking about. First thing one of the things I did is cut the front sight here. So this piece, just cut this off. This is garbage now. Don't need that. We got this piece here. I trimmed it down so that it'll fit underneath here. I did this all with just a cutting wheel. I just cut everything off. Just spin it. For the front, I just made a number of cuts. Just lined straight down. Just kind of moved it back and forth and kind of got everything nice and smooth. That way this piece will just slide right in there like that and fits nice and flush. And I did the same thing with the other receiver half. So if you put the receivers together, you can see that I have this hole in the kind of like the top here that this will slide into. And then you can take one of the receiver screws and that goes right in there. And then you have a piece now that's pretty sturdy, difficult to pull out, doesn't move anywhere. So that should hold pretty nice and tightly. I'm going to end up, before we're done, we're going to get some the epoxy putty or the JB weld and fill in the top hole here too. And we're going to fill in this hole, and I'm going to fill in this back hole here. Whatever like random holes that are open, I'm just going to fill those in to get rid of them, because I'm not going to need them. So, alright. And the screw somehow got screwed in on its own. But okay, so next order of business is getting this piece on here. We're going to have to cut off what we need of this to figure out how far in. We're going to have to determine how far in it actually pushes and how much we need to cut off. And we'll get back to you in a few. Alright, just to kind of give you guys an update of what's going on here. Right now I'm just basically doing a lot of test fitting and trying to figure this out. Like I said, I've never actually done this before, so this kind of project as far as the handguard. And some new ideas, so it's a lot of trial and error and just getting stuff to test fit and get it fit in here. So I got my piece here, I mounted a screw in, mounted a barrel, trying to get this cocking tube to line everything up. So I trimmed this piece here conservatively. It's the minimum I'm going to need to actually be able to get this rod in when it's sitting like that, and that's the distance it's going to have to travel to actually push the charging handle back. So I just kind of measured that and I cut this off. So that's done. It may need to be trimmed a little bit more, Like I said, I was a little conservative. I didn't want to cut too much of it off. Now I'm just basically trying to get this on here lined up. I have this adapter here, barrel adapter to contend with, to bring it down some. So I'm going to have to trim a small portion of this off at about here. I'm just going to mark it. So I'm going to have to trim a little bit into the tube at that point. From there on out, I'm going to have to cut all this excess plastic off the bottom here, just to be able to line up the barrel. And then after I get that done, I'm just using the cutting wheel to trim all this plastic off, just like so. After I get that done, I'm going to see how everything lines up, and then we'll go from there, and we'll figure this out together. So we made a bit of progress here. Got the caulking tube trimmed down. I ended up having to trim this back out here to make room for this barrel adapter, and then I cut all the extra plastic along here. And I also took a sanding drum and ran it up and down the side to kind of give it a concave curve to be able to lay against the barrel nicer. So everything fits pretty decently. It's basically right up against the barrel, right snug. And it's pretty close to the top of this. That's close enough for me. I mean, there's just a teeny little bit extra there. But I think that's good enough, really. When I get everything mounted on there, I might actually bevel that a little bit and smooth it out. Try and make it look flush as possible, but I don't think I'm going to sweat it too much. Trying to get that too close, but I also trimmed the caulking tube thing here pretty short. Actually, I needed it pretty short, because once I realized when I have this on here, I'm going to have to mount this piece in here. I'm going to do about half of this with the epoxy putty is my plan. I'm going to be placing the epoxy putty toward the end here, actually. And then once that hardens, I'm going to be able to pull it out. It will be set in place. Make sure everything's lined up, since that hardens pretty quickly. Once that's set, I'll pull this out, and then I'll reinforce it the rest of the way on this end with the JB weld, and hopefully that'll be nice and solid in there then. I need enough room. This moves about 1.5 inches to be able to caulk. So to be able to caulk the marker, you need about 1.5 inches of travel. So to about this point here. So the charging handle will only travel about that far. I trimmed this inside to leave this inside tube here, leave enough room here for epoxy and stuff like that. Right there. Once that epoxy and everything's in there, I'll leave room on the top, because we're going to need to be able to mount the rod inside this internal tube, the moving tube, so that it'll push in past the top there to be able to caulk the marker. So that's the plan. I'm going to need something quite a bit longer than this, actually, I found out. So I'm going to shop around. I'm going to find something, metal rod that will push the caulking tube in. It's about this size, maybe a little bit longer. And I'll see what I can come up with here. So that's the next few steps. Get this thing mounted and get that charging handle working. Once that's working, that's the hardest part, really. And we'll start working on the front sight, which you can see is going to have to come down a decent amount. I'm going to have to trim off that middle and bring this whole piece down to be able to line it up correctly. Once I get that front sight on, I may try and mount another reinforced layer, like another guide rod mount here. I don't know, we'll see. Like I said, I'm learning as I go here as well. Just kind of trying to figure stuff out. After all that's mounted, then I'm going to have to cut this a little bit on the inside here. This is actually metal on the front, so that's going to be a pain in the butt, but I'll show you how I'm going to do that. And we'll have to figure out some way of mounting this lower handguard as well. I may end up having to just basically permanently glue or epoxy this onto the cocking tube and make it all one unit. So when we're all done, it will be all one unit, and you should be able to hopefully just take off this screw, slide the whole thing out, and that's all it'll take to take off the handguard. Slide it on. This rod will just slide right in and be functional, and hopefully it'll be fairly easy. I want to try to keep it easy enough to disassemble and that kind of thing. This barrel is actually a 14-inch, so we're running a little bit on the longer side. I was hoping to actually get about a 12-inch barrel, but 14 inch is fine. It looks like that's about where we're going to be running at once we get all that together. And I'll end up probably putting on some sort of muzzle brake or something like that. So, alright, I'll get back to you again in the next video with the starting the epoxy and getting this cocking tube mounted.